Well, today I'll be doing Arkansas. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about the coaching, and then I'll talk some about their roster, and then I'll go through their schedule game by game and give you a predicted winner and loser for each game. So Arkansas's head coach, Sam Pittman, I don't think is a very good head coach. He's a good coach at working with offensive lines. He did that for a really long time before becoming the head coach at Arkansas. He was the offensive line coach at Georgia for 4 years before he became the head coach of Arkansas and did a good job there. But in his 4 years as the head coach at Arkansas, he has a losing record at 23 and 25, and only has the one good season. And I know he brought in Bobby Petrino, who is a good offensive coordinator, to be their offensive coordinator. And he did that to try to save his job because he's in big danger of getting fired after this season or even in the middle of this season. But I don't think it's going to work because Arkansas's offense just does not have the talent that Petrino needs to be able to have a good offense this year. I think he can improve it just with his play calling, but it's not going to be a great offense. And for example, just last season, Jimbo Fisher tried to do the same thing. Texas A&M had a terrible offense in 2022, like Arkansas did in 2023, and Jimbo Fisher brought in Bobby Petrino to be the offensive coordinator in hopes of saving his job there. And what's Jimbo Fisher doing right now? Nothing. He's unemployed. Now, of course, I know that probably doesn't matter to him because he got $75 million to get fired. But I'm sure you get my point of this. Petrino can't save Pittman's job, I don't think. And I don't think Pittman is getting $75 million when Arkansas fires him this year. But starting on the offensive side, at quarterback. KJ Jefferson is gone. He transferred out. He was the best quarterback Arkansas has ever had. He was a 3 year starter there. And you can type in the comments that it doesn't matter because he wasn't any good last year, but I think it is going to matter losing him. He struggled last year because the play calling at Arkansas was horrible. But his first 2 years as the starter at Arkansas, he was good. And I think with Bobby Petrino calling the plays, he could have been good again. But now at quarterback, they're going to be terrible. They brought in a transfer quarterback from Boise State. His name is Kalen Green. He's terrible. He started 12 games there last year and only had 1,752 passing yards. And he completed only 57.1% of his passes, which is below average. And the only decent thing about him was his yards per throw average at 8.3. And he can run some. He had 436 on 78 carries and 9 rushing touchdowns, averaging 5.6 a carry last season. But as a passer, he's going to be a disaster in the SEC. Uh, mm, and then at running back, they do bring in Utah's best running back, Jaquindon Jackson, who is good. He'll probably be the starting running back. He has in 2 seasons on 239 carries, 1,328 yards, and 13 touchdowns, averaging 5.6 a carry. But other than him, I think they're questionable at running back. And then at wide receiver, they do return their best wide receiver, who is a good wide receiver, Andrew Armstrong, who had last season 56 catches for 764 and 5 touchdowns, averaging 13.6 a catch. But other than him, they're not very good at wide receiver. Now, they do have a good tight end. They've got Luke Hayes, who was a four-star recruit and really came on last season as a freshman before getting hurt after 5 games and being out for the season. But in those 5 games, he had 16 catches for 253 and 3 touchdowns. And he had a huge game against LSU, catching 6 passes for 116 and 2 touchdowns in that game. And then on the offensive line, I don't think they're going to be that good here. They weren't that good last year on the offensive line, and they only have 2 starters coming back, both guards. Now they do bring in a really good offensive line transfer, a left tackle from San Jose State, Fernando Camona, who last season only allowed 2 sacks and 12 total pressures. And you would expect Arkansas to be solid on the offensive line with Pittman being the coach, because that's his best position. So then on the defensive side, Arkansas at times played really well defensively last season, and then at times they played horrible. But overall, they weren't very good defensively last year, and I don't think they'll be very good defensively this year either. Probably a little bit worse than last season. So on the defensive line, they do have one really good player coming back, Landon Jackson, who had last season 44 tackles and 6.5 sacks and 9 total pressures. And he had a huge game against Alabama last season where he had 11 tackles and 3.5 sacks. He's a player that was expected to go pro after last season, but decided to come back. But he needs help there, and I don't really think he has it. He seems to be their only good player on the defensive line. And then at linebacker, they're not as good here either. They lose their top two, Jaheim Thomas and Chris Paul, who transferred out. But they do bring in a really good linebacker from Georgia, a former 5-star recruit, Xavier Sori, who started 2 games there last season and played in 11 and had 19 tackles and a sack and 6 total pressures and a pass breakup. He should be able to help them out at linebacker, but he's really their only good player there as of right now. And then in the secondary, they do have some good players here. The safeties are good. Uh, they've got Hudson Clark, who in 2 seasons combined has 117 tackles and 15 pass breakups and 2 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles and 3 fumble recoveries. And they've got Jaden Johnson, who last season had 62 tackles and 3 pass breakups and an interception and a forced fumble. And then they do have one good cornerback. They've got Jalen Braxton, who uh, was a 4-star recruit and uh, got 6 starts and played in 9 games as a true freshman last season and started to come on, having 21 tackles and 8 pass breakups and an interception and a forced fumble and fumble recovery. But the other starting corner is questionable. And then on special teams, they're very questionable here. They lose both specialists and no good looking replacements there. But now, moving on to the predictions, that they start the year against Arkansas Pine Bluff, which will be a blowout win. If they struggle to win this game, then they're going to be even worse than I think they are. Then on the road at Oklahoma State. So this game, I think, could be a little closer than expected to be because I know it doesn't seem like it, but Arkansas has actually been out recruiting Oklahoma State. Now, the difference here, though, is coaching. Mike Gundy gets a whole lot more out of his players. And Oklahoma State is a much better team than Arkansas, in my opinion. especially offensively. And Arkansas, though, I do think will be able to score some points in this game running the football because Oklahoma State doesn't have a very good defensive line. And Oklahoma State's offense, though, I think Arkansas is going to have no hopes really of stopping them. So I think Oklahoma State will win by at least a touchdown. So then they play UAB, which should be a pretty easy win. Mm. And then they play on the road at Auburn. So this game, I think, will probably be pretty close. Now, Auburn, I think, is clearly the better team and the better coach team. Auburn, I think, will be able to run the football a whole lot in this game. That's what they're going to want to do still this season. And Arkansas, I know, has some good defensive backs, but Auburn is not going to want to throw the ball a lot anyway. And Arkansas, I think, is going to struggle to score a lot of points in this game because Auburn's defense isn't going to be great, but I think it's going to be very solid. So this is also a road game for Arkansas, and Auburn is one of those teams that if they're clearly better than you, they're very unlikely to lose to you if they're at home because Auburn is such a tough place to play. So I think Auburn wins by around a touchdown. Mm. So then they play Texas A&M. So this is a rivalry game, so it could be pretty close. But Texas A&M is a so much more talented team than Arkansas is. I think that Arkansas will struggle to score on Texas A&M's defense, and they will struggle to stop Texas A&M. I actually think that Texas A&M will probably win this game by two scores. And Texas A&M, I think, is going to have better coaching this season too. So then they play Tennessee at home. So this one could be pretty close. But Tennessee is much better than Arkansas at the line of scrimmage. And they've got a better group of wide receivers than Arkansas. So I think that Arkansas is going to struggle to score a lot in this game because Tennessee's strength is stopping the run, and that's what Arkansas is going to want to do because they don't have a very good quarterback. So Tennessee, I think, will win this one. So then they play LSU at home. So this is a possible upset game for LSU. This game is almost always close, and I think it'll be really close again this year. I think Bobby Petrino will come up with a good game plan in this game to be able to score quite a few points on LSU's defense. Because LSU's defense, I think, is still going to struggle some this year on the defensive line and in the secondary. And LSU, though, I think is going to score a lot of points on Arkansas. LSU's offense, I think, is still going to be good. They've got a much better offensive line that Arkansas does, and their new quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, I already think has proven that he's a better quarterback than this transfer that Arkansas has brought in, and LSU has got more options at wide receiver. So I do think that LSU will just be a little too good, and they'll win. So then they play on the road at Mississippi State. Similar teams last year and similar teams this year. But the difference is that Arkansas is bad, but Mississippi State is horrible. So these were both two of the worst offenses in college football last season. And both teams have brought in good offensive coaches to try to fix it. Mississippi State brings in Jeff Levy as the head coach, who is a really good offensive coach. But like with Petrino at Arkansas, Levy does not have the talent that he needs to have a good offense this year at Mississippi State. He has even less talent to work with on the offensive side than Petrino does at Arkansas. and Mississippi State's defense is going to be horrible this year. Arkansas at least has some good players in the secondary, but Mississippi State doesn't really have any good players on the defensive side. So I think there'll be more points scored in this game than when they played last year. Last year, I looked at the score for this game, and Mississippi State won 7-3. But I think Arkansas is the better team and the more experienced team to where they get a road win. So then they play Ole Miss at home. So Ole Miss, I think, playing on the road may have a slow start in this game, and this game has usually been close. Even like last year when Ole Miss was clearly a much better team than Arkansas was, the game was still close. And Arkansas, though, is just nowhere near as good as Ole Miss on any part of the roster. And I'm an Ole Miss fan, so I know how Ole Miss does in these types of situations. Most of the time, they do play worse than you would expect them to. But I think they're just too good this year, and they'll pull away in the fourth quarter and beat Arkansas by around 2 touchdowns. So then they play Texas at home. So this is going to be a blowout loss for Arkansas. Texas, their strength of the defense is still going to be stopping the run, which is what Arkansas is going to want to do. And Texas's offense is going to be so good, and Arkansas is not going to be able to stop them. I think Texas will win this by like 3 touchdowns or more. So then Louisiana Tech, which it should be a pretty easy win, maybe not a big blowout, but should win by like 20. So then they end the season on the road at Missouri. So Missouri's offense is much better than Arkansas's is, but I don't really like Missouri's defense that much. But theirs is more average, I think. While Arkansas's defense is gonna be below average. So I think that this game could end up being pretty close, but Missouri is just too good, and they'll win by at least a touchdown. So my final prediction for Arkansas is 4-8 overall and 1-7 in the conference. And you can tell me in the comments that I just hate Arkansas and they're going to be great, but that would be crazy. It's obvious that they're going to have another rough season and Sam Pittman is going to get fired. But that'll be it with this video. Thanks for watching and please subscribe and I'll be back very soon.